So good afternoon. Thanks y'all for coming out. It is amazing to see everyone in person again and to be here amongst all these great Agilists and people who want to learn cool new stuff. We have the beneficiary of being the after lunch session, which is great because y'all have food. We have food coma. So in order to fight the food coma, what I'd like everyone to do is to stand up really quick. And we're going to stretch. We're just going to kind of lean a little to the left, another little to the right. Wonder Woman pose.
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman pose. Just get limber, right? Because we're here to learn, want to get the bodies going. And so this does two things, right? Number one, gets your mind ready to go. And number two, the exercise kicks a dopamine response, which means you're slightly more responsive to what we're going to say, and you will like us more. Yeah. So a little bit of social engineering here as well. All right, I appreciate it. Did anybody break anything? Everyone's good? Okay. It's really, I did a conference one time. Someone blew out a knee.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, never good. Thank you really quick to all the past sponsors. Everyone, they're the ones who make this possible. They're the ones who really enable us to kind of do this stuff. They pay the bills, they make it the cost reasonable for us, and without them we couldn't do it. And I am not just saying that because I work for one of them, but genuinely sponsors really make the heart of everything go, and really appreciate that they're here. So what are we here to talk about today? Values and velocity. So we're going to kind of do some introductions. We'll introduce myself and Wendy, and then we're going to kind of talk about why is this concept important? What are we going to actually talk about? We'll talk about our definition of values so we can level set on that, and then we'll actually go into the building of a value framework. We'll go into the dimensions, the value scales, things like that. For product managers, it's kind of like building your own lightsaber. I realize I've used this joke to death, but it's cool, and we have to have at least one Star Wars reference in every Agile presentation, I believe. Right?
Indeed. Okay.
And then we'll kind of wrap up. We've got exercises. We'll have pens to hand out as we go along. But first, a word about us.
So I've also heard you have to have dogs in every presentation so everybody is happy. You are seeing my two little ones, Lily and Murphy. My name's Wendy Jacobs. I am here in Columbus, Ohio. I work at Fannie Mae, mortgage, not chocolate. That would be fun if it were the other way, I guess. But it's an exciting place to be, and I work in the Product Management Center of Excellence. So I spend my days teaching, mentoring, coaching product people.
Cool. My name is Husemann. The only person that calls me Charles is my wife. It's weird. It's a thing. I don't understand it. So I went to Miami University. The things to know about me, I moved to Chicago last year after spending 25 years here in Columbus. So I had an opportunity to move out there for work, so I moved out there. I do a stupid amount of running. I'm actually training for a marathon, which was a terrible idea. But it gives me lots of things. The thing to know about is my wife loves nachos. And so if you know me or social media, and you're like, why is she eating a pie in that last picture? It's because we're in the UK, and UK pies are the equivalent of nachos. I don't make the rules. And finally, I assure you, I am not a robot, which is feedback I've gotten a couple of times. I know that's what a robot would say, but
Wow.
I can check the box on the websites. So why is this important? Why are we talking about value in our Agile teams, right? And so we go back to teams are the foundational way we deliver value to our customers, right? This is they're the core of it. And as we get into Agiles, we talk about all this stuff. We talk about we want to create high-performing teams. Why? Because high-performing teams release code to customers more frequently and more efficiently. And that's great, right? We've got story points and velocity and are we on budget? We've got cycle and lead time, and all these are great metrics to have, which is great, but, and there's always a but, more than 50% of the features we develop aren't actually used. And this is this is a couple years old, but it's kind of astounding. So 50% of the things that we are doing aren't what our customers want. So let's talk about that. What are some reasons this happens? We know we've got our list, but just shout out some answers. What are things that you see or reasons that we're not delivering things that customers want? Hey, it's a great one.
Good
okay.
One.
Anything else? Time to delivery. Yeah, Melissa talked about that earlier today, right? We deliver features 2 years after somebody wants it. Over here?
Oh.
We don't have customers.
Don't have customers. Okay, that's an interesting situation to be in, right?
Maybe the customers don't know what they need.
Yep.
Yeah, never hear that.
Never.
Oh. What else?
Anything?
The feature exists.
Okay.
Okay.
Customers don't know the feature exists.
Yeah, don't exist. Yeah.
Measuring the wrong stuff.
Measuring the wrong stuff. Okay, that's great.
You're in the right place.
Yeah,
Good job.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, she just spoiled the entire presentation.
She did. You want to come? No.
So getting back to answers, right? I think this is what the customer wants without doing the research. We focus on delivery metrics. Anybody wanted the highest paid person's opinion ever on a project? Like the senior VP is like their pet project and they want to invest millions of dollars in something that only 3 people want. Hey, it's the next thing on the roadmap, right? We built this roadmap at the beginning of the year. We've got to just jam through this thing. One customer told us this might be something they think they kind of want. That sometimes happens. We talked about, work being assigned. Teams don't talk to customers. That's a big one. We don't talk to our customers to ask them what they want. And that's important because customers don't care about your throughput, your story points, your on budget, your cycle and lead time, right? Does anyone here actually care about the velocity of the Facebook team that was responsible for putting out, the memories feature? Or if you get an update, if you're using Teams this week, you notice that all your emojis for reacting to things change, right? No one cares about the throughput of that team, right? They care about that that's the actual feature in market. And so how do we fix this kind of issue? So we need to focus on value delivered instead of output metrics. Again, the output metrics are valuable. They're great things for improving how we work, and they're the key to what we do as Agilists, but they're not the sole focus. We should not be beating our teams about the head and shoulders because they didn't deliver all the story points they wanted. We should talk about value. Because if we aren't delivering the right thing, we're wasting time and money, right? And no one wants to do that. If you're in a competitive market, that's the worst thing you can do right now. Especially as we're seeing all these headwinds about recessions and whatnot. It's really critical to make sure we're delivering the right thing. And product management is really the area that helps us. It helps us align our teams to what the values are, what our customers are wanting. And again, we talked about the Agile principles this morning. Maximize the value, not done. So how a value framework can help. So this is what we're going to be talking about a large part today. It's going to help us improve prioritization, making sure, again, we're developing the right thing. It empowers product owners and product managers. This is a really big thing. If you're new to Agile or if you're an organization that's very siloed, being able to bring in a value framework is one of those things that can really help you empower your product owners to make sure you're delivering the right thing. It can help you navigate that HIPPO issue, right? 9 times out of 10, a new feature is going to come in, the senior vice president of yada, yada, yada wants you to develop this particular feature. Well, you run it through a value framework, and it's going to help you kind of say, well, this feature is important, we hear you, but it's not as important as these other different things. And finally, we can get into identifying features that are aligned to wants and needs. It pairs really well with application telemetry or instrumentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have different terms for the same thing. And what we're talking about that is that if you have metrics and analytics actually built in your application, like button clicks, things like that, where actually want to track how much a customer is actually using your product, we can take your essentially hypothesis of the feature that we're going to deliver and say, we expect a 25% growth because we're going to do X. And now I can go back and actually see that it's actually being delivered. And then we can adapt as we go. And then finally, we can focus on delivery value over just delivery metrics. Again, we're not saying that the delivery metrics aren't important, because they are, because they can help you adjust and make your team more efficient or operate better, but they're not the sole focus. And so for now, we'll actually talk about what value is and hand it over to Wendy.
Awesome. Haven't used this
Left,
one.
right.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, arrows. So I spend my time coaching product people, talking to product people, talking about product stuff. And the one thing that product people have trouble with is making decisions, right? What should go next? And so to pile on his last slide, it's more data. Why a value framework is important? It gives you more data, helps you make better decisions, helps you feel more comfortable with the decisions that you're making. A value framework is not going to be an answer machine, but it is going to be something that gives you a lot of good information. But we do need to define what value is. Now that's a tricky thing. If you go ahead on your phones and did a search on what is value, you're going to get a bunch of different things that come back. But at the end of the day, it's not just money, right? It's what you get for what you give. Now a lot of that does translate into money, but a lot of things that we see are valuable, is it about money? It's, I have value for making someone happy. There's value for having something go faster. Now, yeah, that can translate to money ultimately, but it's not just about the dollars. So we have 2 value types that I've narrowed it down. We're going to be talking about business value mostly, And so in business value, you do the search for that. It's all forms of value that determine the health and well-being of the organization in the long run. Well, what does that mean? Yeah, it's pretty vague. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? We're going to talk about how to spot the business value for where you work, for your company. The other piece of it is customer value. And the customer value is, you can read it, but the role of the product manager is blending, right? So making sure that you pull in that you watch your business value and your customer value, because you, at the end of the day, would like to have people use your features, have people see value in your features. So there's a fine balance between the two. So as I was mentioning, from the business value perspective, value isn't the same for everybody, right? So pick your favorite company. They are going to value things in a different way than your other favorite company. We talk about, throw out a company for me. Anybody? Who? Apple. Okay. So what do we think that Apple values? They're going to be looking at, so to determine what Apple values, you would want to look at things like how do they give their people more money, right? So how would you get a raise at Apple? Well, you might get a raise at Apple for making the most customer intuitive feature ever, maybe, I don't know. Or you would make the product that has the least buttons, right? Apple likes simplicity. So simplicity might be a piece of their business value. However, you look at another company, pick your other favorite company, and they may not care about the simplicity aspects. They may be more focused on customer satisfaction. They may be really focusing on operational efficiency, so that they want things to be lean and mean. It really depends. And then the big struggle, or the big challenge when you create a business value framework for an organization is different pieces of the organization may value things in a different way. So you really have to dig in and understand at the core, what does this corporation value? What does this enterprise value? So that when you're going to use this value framework, you can do apples to apples comparisons between the different pieces of the organization, as opposed to having, the IT area has one framework, the one business vertical has another framework, another business vertical has a third framework. It's hard to compare across and do portfolio level valuations. So what we're talking about is doing one for a company so that you can take a look across and see the value you're delivering. Yep, covered all that stuff. Okay, so if you have any, by the way, we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but if you have questions along the way, please don't hesitate. Raise your hand, jump up and down, rush the stage, whatever works best for you guys. Okay, so when we talk about what does your company value, right? So that's a big thing, and I was trying to name some things as we go. Value comes in many shapes and sizes. I really like this value tree, not because it gives you the answer for what you should be using as your value dimensions, but it can spark some ideas, and it can make you look deeper into what your organization actually cares about, what your organization actually values. And you'll notice on there, not everything's about money, again. Now, I did not create this value tree. This was from Bain & Company in 2015. Interestingly, I created a value framework at a previous company I worked at and didn't have the benefit of this tree. I hadn't done the search to find it. This would have made my life a lot easier. What I instead did was really I did lots of interviews. I did lots of chatting around with just anyone and everyone I could find to say, what do we care about? Right? This would have given me a bit of a cheat sheet. So when we talk about sample value dimensions, because as I kind of let it go, the framework we're talking about is made up of dimensions. right? Not one value dimension, but multiple value dimensions, because you want to have a very holistic look at the stuff that you're building, right? And so some sample ones are maybe you're trying to focus, your company values growth, customer growth. Your company might want to focus on operational efficiency, which is saving time, saving money, you're leaning out things. Some might be about customer satisfaction, legal and regulatory compliance. There are many companies out there that really value legal and regulatory compliance, because if you don't focus on that, it could cost you quite a bit of money. So they like to focus on that one. Quality, I hope everyone's company here wants to focus on quality. Quality is super important for very many things, including making your customers happy. And then cost containment. Cost containment is not cost avoidance, cost reductions, things like that. Good? Did you hand out the stuff? Good? All right, here we go. So we have an activity. Chuck should have handed out papers to all of you. And on these papers, do you want to run the, you can run the activity. Go for it.
So in the first section, what we want you to do is pick, there we go. On one side of the piece of paper we handed out is going to be the value pyramid, and the second half is going to be kind of an activity to actually do some work on. So the first thing we'd like you to do is to pick a company to work with and to identify some of the value dimensions for your company. So we'll give you a couple minutes. So everyone can pick your own. Ideally, if you want to collaborate with your people at a table, that's great. If you want to be, don't feel obligated to. But go ahead, pick a company you want to work for, or off that list, which is right here. We tried to be, somewhat relevant to our folks here, companies here locally, although not necessarily. So pick a company, and then pick a couple of value dimensions from that tree, or think about the things that may not be on that tree that you feel are going to be valuable at a company. And so we'll give everybody, let's say, 7 minutes till about 12 or 1:55 to kind of work. So come up with your value dimensions, and then we'll kind of go around the horn. We're expecting there's going to be some overlap. I'm interested to see, as people pick multiple companies or the same company, I'm sure there's going to be some overlap as well as some particular differences as well. So does that make sense to everyone? So pick a company and then pick some of the value dimensions, either from the value pyramid or things that you think that company is going to value. All right. And we'll get 7 minutes starting now. And if you've got questions, just raise your hand, and then I will hop off the stage, and then Wendy will we will circulate to answer questions. Oh, cool.
All right, I'm on. Yay! All right. How'd that feel? Okay. Right. So I popped around and talked to some folks during it, and the goal of this first exercise was really to use that cool tree to try to get some ideas about what the company that you chose might value, right? To identify those things that you would want to ultimately put your features against, right? So the ultimate use of the value framework is for you to take features that you're interested in, and features that you're interested in building, and putting it against this framework and saying, okay, well, how does it rate for this dimension? How does it rate for this dimension? Now, we can't do that until we know how we're going to measure things, right? This is the hard part. Sorry, I buried the lead on that, but the scales that we talk about, right? So when you're talking about value dimensions, it's the scales that are the things that you say, all right, this table, because you sat in front, give me an example dimension. Do you have one?
Quality.
Quality, okay. How would you measure that in figuring out if it's positive or negative?
Customer satisfaction survey.
You would, okay, number of bugs, right? So if you value high quality, you likely are going to want to reduce the number of defects, right? So your measurement or your scale would be based on defect rates, maybe defects leaking into production, however you want to phrase that. Maybe a defect backlog. I don't know. Depends on your organization, your company. But So taking those dimensions and trying to figure out, okay, now how am I going to measure that? Because if you say, oh, it's customer satisfaction, I want everyone to be happy. Okay, how do we know? How do we know they're happy? How can we measure that they're happy? Now, in some cases, we might need baselines, right? I have no idea how happy my customers are right now, but I want to make them happier. Okay, great. What you'll need to do is you'll need to get a baseline for how happy they are today so that you can then go forward and say, I want to increase by, it's a positive if we increase by 10, 20, 30%. If we make them unhappy, it's a negative 10, negative 10, rid of 20, negative 30. So you need to understand, again, how are you going to measure? I need those scales. Okay, so I talk and then I look at the slide to make sure I cover all the slide. So the things that when we talk about the scales, we're not going to use percentages as the actual scale, right? So I should show the sample. That'll make life easier. So instead, we use Fibonacci. Who here knows what Fibonacci is? Okay, good. I'm so glad that most of the room raised their hands. And we use the Fibonacci scale. We use a modified Fibonacci scale in order to provide spread between them. Because what you aren't trying to get is all your features have a score of 100. None of your features have, anything else. You want spread between them because at the end of the day, what this framework does, and we talked about this before, is this provides you some more data to help with your prioritization. And so if all of your numbers are clumped together, not as helpful, right? Not as helpful. We can't have 10 number ones. We're trying to make sure that we have spread between the numbers so that it helps you out. Now, we created some sample scales, and one other thing I'll say about the scales, so when I built the value framework with help from others, we did the interviews, we did pilots, because we needed to understand if our scales were right. Because you first go out the gate, your scales may not be exactly fitting to where you're trying to go. So we start with these. Yeah. You want to give an example?
Sure. I mean, we kind of user retention is a big one for a lot of companies, right? How do we know that a particular feature is going to retain customers? Well, we expect the base to go up or down X%. And again, you'll adjust these to your organization. These are kind of generic intentionally, just so you can kind of get some ideas and modify them to yourself. But, we talked about cost avoidance, right? So we're going to implement a new feature. Let's say you're going to the cloud, right? Cloud consumption costs are something that a lot of companies don't deal with on-prem. So I'm going to lower my maintenance costs, but I might increase my reoccurring costs. So you might see that the cost go up or down. We better worry about cost containment on that. I call the top right one the Melissa Perry one, because Melissa Perry always talks about, doesn't want to talk about sales and making money, but it's a core part of what we do. How do we think this is going to impact our sales? Do we think it's going to be a 10%? And for a lot of executives, things like that, that might be the top line number. But you might say, hey, we expect to go to the cloud. It's going to make us faster, better retention, but it's going to cost us more money. So a lot of these things will kind of tie into each other in terms of involve and things like that. I always like the bottom right one. We're customer focused, but can we also improve the life of our teammates? What's the quality of life of improvement of if I reduce the screen, if I combine a couple of screens, if I'm migrating again from the cloud, can I improve the user experience of this something? Can make my teammates more efficient, make them happier, because happier teammates lead to other things, but that might be a slight increase of cost someplace else. So again, they're not necessarily black and white. I think we go to the next one, next slide. We'll talk about this, right?
Yes, sir.
So an example of building a value dimension scale, like I had to set a complex password. Anyone here dealt with the bank recently? Or anything to deal with cyber in the last year? Like anybody not heard of a cybersecurity horror story in the last 18 months? So we talk about security, right? So there's a very close relationship between the complexity of security and the user experience. So as we get more and more secure, the user experience goes down, especially if we're getting 20, 30 character passwords that are complex, you can't use words, things like that. So if I set a complex password, let's say, numbers and letters, characters, and I've dealt with this recently with my own company, You know, it's going to be good for security. It's going to be good for legal regulatory, because the last thing you really want to do is as a government agency checking on your security, especially if you're a bank or a publicly traded company. The strategic alignment, because we want to provide security, but customer satisfaction is probably going to go down, because some of those things are really hard to memorize. And anyone have like an elderly parent who you've had to have the cybersecurity chat with? Okay, if you haven't, it's coming, and it's unpleasant because you get a list of passwords like, you know, hey, Dad, give me a list of all your passwords, and they're all the same. And you're like, oh, okay, can we innovate here? If we do something different. And then I got yelled at by my mom 2 weeks ago. She was like, you told me to change all the passwords and I can't remember any of them are. That wasn't fun. We're like, but you're secure, but we're setting lots of passwords. So again, this is a good example of that. How do we kind of measure? Every particular feature is going to have positives and negatives, and so weighing all of those together is going to kind of get us there.
Yeah, so that's why we have those negative scales, right? Because again, if you're not looking holistically at the feature and how it's going to impact, then you're just hiding your eyes, right? You need to be upfront about the fact that, yeah, complex password, super important. Yeah, people are going to hate it. And so we just need to embrace that, right? And then you balance that, right? You have something else that is going to be super important to customer satisfaction, right? You're changing it so that they can stay logged in for 24 hours or something. I don't know. That would make them happy. The security and legal regulatory might not be as happy about that. So you're balancing all of these things. And again, these are just data points for you so that you can make good decisions.
Some days we create awesome, some days you manage suck.
Okay. All right, so you identified dimensions. And you may look back at the dimensions that you created and said, wow, there is really no way to measure that thing. Okay, that's part of the challenge, right? So I need you to look at the things that you picked as your dimensions and try to determine how you would measure it in a positive and negative way, right? What would make sense? What would mean something? Again, customer satisfaction, maybe we use NPS. We want our NPS to go up. We don't want our NPS to go down. A positive impact of the scales would be NPS going up. A negative would be NPS going down. And you don't want just a binary, right? It's not good or bad. There's grades, right? So it's super awesome, or it's
Less
super
awesome.
bad. Super bad, right? And you know, if you find yourself going through these things and you find that you're rating your stuff all in the negatives, you should probably be rethinking about what the heck are we trying to build here? You know, if there's no super clear look at the positive value that you're trying to add. I doubt anyone in this room would have that happen. So, activity.
So in that same box that you put your value dimensions, or your dimensions, just to the right of that, start writing out your scales. And then you could be something as formal as what we had here.
Yep.
Or you can
Forward more.
One more.
Yeah,
There we go.
That one.
Or just start cutting out ideas of what your positive and negative is going to be, just to get an idea. And we'll do, let's say, 10 minutes here. Nope.
Sound good?
So about 9 minutes now. So about quarter after. So
Right.
we'll leave this up as an example, but just kind of work through it. And if you need questions, just raise your hand, and when you're in, I'll come over and talk to you. Everybody good on time? Everybody, we're about at time. Everybody good? Bad? Anybody need more time? Raise your hand. Anybody actually paying attention? Okay. Sorry to make you one, Wendy. I waited till Wendy was in the back of the room to actually raise your hand. Timing. So how are we feeling? Anyone want to talk about one example of something they came up with? Can I pick on a table?
Yeah, not this table because I already
Okay,
picked
we
on
picked
them.
them. So Chris, what was one of the value dimensions you came up with, and how did you create your scale?
Nope.
No. You picked Wendy's? Okay.
Some of the dimensions were quality, current technology, modern marketing, simplicity of transaction. So how do we measure those? Simplicity of transaction, what kind of reviews are we getting? Are we positive or negative reviews out there in the wild?
So you're talking about reviews on social media and as well as something like Yelp and things like that. Okay.
modern marketing, they use social media.
Okay.
So, what kind of response do they get? Do they get positive responses to that? Do they get retweets, that sort of stuff, views, that sort of stuff?
Yes.
Current technology.
Current technology.
3 ways to order Wendy's that we're aware of. In the store, they only do the menus that
Yeah.
you and they're hard. And I'm not an idiot, they're hard.
Yeah.
There's drive up and then there's the app.
Yeah.
So number of orders each place. They can build in a timer and you can on how long it takes to get started to submit it.
So for summarize, basically, you're looking at the through touch points of ordering in store on their kiosk, the app, and then the drive-through, and then measuring performance of how long it takes. And that's, you feel like they could probably do some user interface work on the kiosk because it's kind of a disaster.
Value, you're getting time.
Yeah.
You can make some assumptions based on how long it takes to order in the store versus on the app versus the drive.
So time to cheeseburger is an actual metric. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that's a great value.
Yeah. And I think people really, in fast food, how fast you get people through the drive-through is a hardcore metric that they track aggressively. Oh. Any other volunteers?
Can you repeat the ones that Chris did so that this side of the room can hear? Because none of them heard it.
So Chris talked about modern marketing, technology, essentially how long it took to get through the order. So they were looking at how long it took people to get through the store, looking at essentially right now you can order food in the store via kiosk, you can order via the drive-through, or you can order via the mobile app. And they wanted to look at kind of the time to cheeseburger as a metric of how long does it take you to successfully complete your order. Imagine order complexity could be a volume of that as well. So, you know.
And the key with those is, again, what are you trying to do, right? So the scale would be, are you trying to decrease time, increase numbers? That's what your dimension would look like.
Yeah.
Right? So it's if you keep narrowing down that this is what we care about, time to cheeseburger, then you would identify, I think is what you said.
Time to fries is valuable, I think.
Whatever. Time to crispy fries, because they said all their fries are now hot and crispy fries, right? So then you would figure out what your measurements look like. And so it would either, again, number of cheeseburgers, amount of time that you've shaved off getting a cheeseburger, whatever it is. Whatever is important to you.
Cool.
Good? Okay. Anyone on this side want to give an example, or are we good? Anyone brave? Okay. Oh, back there. All right. Get down there. Okay. He's running.
And then you can set a rate of reduction of returns, which is a big amount of money. It's talking about something like
this is for the online retailer?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So online retailer, you want to reduce the number of returns.
Right.
Yeah. So if it's a money loser to every time you get returns, it's important for you to reduce that number. And so you would be looking for features that would help you reduce the number of returns that you get back, however you do that. Yeah? That's what you were saying? Okay, good. Okay, cool. Yeah, while he's running around with a microphone, anyone else want to share? Are we good to keep moving? I'm seeing we're moving. Okay. All right. So I keep talking about the fact that this value stuff is just another piece of data, right? It's another piece of data that you're going to want to use to help you with multiple things, but one of the things you would use it for is for prioritization. And so let's pretend we've created our value framework, we've run things through it. You also are going to want to, you could use some fun charting, or you could use some things to balance against to determine exactly where you want to prioritize this thing. So some of the prioritization fields you could be using would be business risk, which could be the risk of not doing. You could do technical risk, which can translate to complexity. You could use cost, and you could use effort. Now, the effort would come from your teams, right? From the development team saying, this thing is huge, this thing is small, whatever it is. What we were able to do with our framework was we actually did kind of a three axes, 3D cool thing where we used value, we used size of the thing, so effort, and we used cost. And so we would take a look at things and see where they fit in different quadrants, right? Because we were trying to figure out what's the biggest bang for the buck, what's the one that's going to be, hey, maybe this has mid-level value, but it's super quick to do and inexpensive, so we might want to prioritize that way, right? Again, these are all data points to give you more information to let you prioritize most effectively. You want to say anything?
No, sure.
My turn? Okay, so where do you apply value? When I first was thinking about this stuff, it was at that feature level, right? I got a lot of pushback saying, but I want to know which projects have the most value. Okay, we could do it at the project level. You just have to think a lot about what's in that project, right? You have to think about how that project will impact the value, right? Putting it against the dimensions. If you do it at a project level, it makes it easier to do cost as a prioritization field, because it's typical that you wouldn't have cost at the feature level, but you would have cost at a project level. And then you can use it at a portfolio level to determine where should the funding go next. Here's the high value thing. Maybe we want to send our portfolio money that way and help you prioritize that way. We had success at all three levels. Going below a feature gets weird because it's really hard you're not moving the needle at a story level, right? Feature is about the lowest level, I would suggest. Now, some of you might be using epics instead of features. It's that the bigger rock that you're going to want to use this at, and not the small things, not the tasks and the stories.
Yeah, because you'll just drown in estimation and debt. I think we're already doing a lot of that as is. So I think finding the right level for your organization, again, like when you said, it's going to vary depending on what you're trying to estimate in value. This can be really good, like at the portfolio level, to evaluate projects that are coming in. And again, you're tying all this stuff back to your organizational wants and needs. So figuring out the right, and again, different contexts, it can relate different ways. You can have different value systems, but they should all largely tie into each other.
And when you change the conversation over to a value conversation, let me tell you how happy your stakeholders and your sponsors and your leaders get, because you're talking about things that matter to them, right? If you go to them and you're talking about, well, this story and this story and this story, they're, glaze over. But you start talking about this value stuff and you start engaging with them to work with you on the value stuff, oh, they get very excited. They get very happy because they know that you're focusing on the bottom line. You're focusing on the things important to the business, which is key in this point.
And it really helps take some of the emotion out of things, right? Everyone has certain favorite things they really want to do, something they think is going to be a really, really good idea. But if the value's low, then it allows you to kind of, again, to address that hippo in the room, right? Like, hey, we think this is a great idea, but we can do it. Someone comes in hot and bothered, they went to a conference and they saw something really, really awesome, and they're like, we should do this. Okay, well, it's a great idea. It's going to take you 5 months to do it. It's going to cost, several $100,000, and 5 people are going to use it. I don't know that that's really a good idea. But now maybe we can shift some of that idea. Maybe we can break that down a little bit. Maybe we can decompose that big thing into smaller things and try smaller experiments to get it in the market.
Yeah, I was approached by lots of product people saying, I have so many stakeholders. I can't make any of them happy, right? Every stakeholder wants their thing to go next. By introducing something like this, it's hard to argue. It's hard to argue when you have these dimensions and you say, okay, well, I realize you want to do, this great little feature that nobody's going to use and all this kind of stuff, but look at what look at what's ahead of you. Look at what's higher in value than you are. Having those conversations with all the stakeholders in the room, you don't embarrass them. You talk about it with the data. They understand. They stop arguing. Now, it also might trigger them to say, oh, but maybe if we did it this other way, we would trigger higher value things. So it actually can help you not only with the prioritization, but it can help you with the formulation of good high value features.
Yeah. It sparks conversations, right?
Yeah,
And that's the big
it's all
thing.
about the conversation.
Yeah. How do we make this thing more appealing? And again, people are going to game the system because people always game whatever system you put in place. But in this way, hey, you're gaming it because we want things to be more valuable. Throw me in that briar patch every single day of the week, right? That's what we want them to do. You want to break that down? You want to make sure we're delivering the right value to our customers? Sure, we'll help you figure that out.
Next.
Yep.
We good? All right. Hey, we have another activity. Woohoo! All right, so I warned some of you when I was wandering around that this one was coming. So when we did some dimensions, we did some scales, and I think you have a paper there that has some features on it.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah,
Yes?
the features aren't on the features on the next slide.
Oh, features are on the next slide. Should I show them the features?
Let's walk them through the exercise first.
Oh, well, I'm going to show them, spoilers, whatever. So you're going to pick feature or features, and we're going to have you evaluate them, right? Based on those dimensions and scales that you created, we want you to start thinking about, okay, let's pick the online retailer, which our friends in the back did. And there is add a credit card to your account is a feature. Thinking about the dimensions that you identified and thinking about the scales that you identified, how does that feature do, right? So rate it, right? Run it through and rate it. You don't have to do them all, right?
Just pick one or two.
One or two.
That seem the most appealing to you, and see how they sort out in your value framework.
We're trying to get you, the muscle memory on this stuff. Just try it out and see how it works. How long are we given?
Let's go 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 2:38.
2:38, go. All right, so I want to hear some examples of what you did. There's someone over here. Joe, run. Run, Joe, run.
This is wish fulfillment at any level, right?
Okay.
We have to turn the mic on, please.
There's an on button there too.
Ah,
Okay.
there you go.
Sorry for that loud smack. So we did the bank, sign up for a credit card. So the offer or incentive is if you are a new customer, would want to baseline as we want more credit card signups. We want new customers. So the incentive would be offer a toaster. Thanks to Joe. So as we increase or want more customers to sign up for the credit card, increase the credit card sales and new offers, that could also attract customers to sign up for other checking products at the bank or financial product that they offer. But we have to be mindful too of, does the incentive for offering a new toaster then outweigh what we are earning as a bank?
Okay. And what were your value frameworks and dimensions that you came up with?
The rewards me and then makes money.
Okay. Cool. And how did you create scales for that at all, or just those were your ones?
Yeah,
That's cool. It's a start, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Next steps.
So the thing to remember is that you're creating one framework to run all your features across, right? So you want to make sure that you have dimensions that cover all four corners of your company.
Yeah.
And so what would be interesting is if you took your rewards and then took another feature, see how they compare, right? And the fun part is you can think about it and say, oh, I'm sure this one is much more valuable. And then when you run it past all those dimensions, you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way, right? This is about getting you to think. This is about getting you to think all the way around so that you build the highest value stuff for the organization. So anyway, good job. I think there was a hand behind you as well. Yep.
Hello.
Ooh.
Oh, goodness. All right, so we did the fast food restaurant, and we're going to talk about ordering ahead. One of our dimensions was reducing costs And by ordering ahead, you can avoid having any staff whatsoever in your restaurant. So that's going to be laying off all sorts of great people. So plus 21 on that one for us. We had heirloom, okay? And since you're ordering ahead, we're going to deliver that stuff to you by drone. And if the drone crash lands in your yard, you get to keep it. Ooh. So heirloom plus 50, what was it, 50, nice. 56? So that's wonderful. Entertainment, if the drone does successfully deliver your food after you order, plus 1, because it's going to tell you a witty joke as it delivers your food to you. We love robots that talk to everyone, so there's wonderful. And reducing anxiety. It's wonderful to order online because I hate talking to people and, especially getting a microphone and talking to a big group of people. So no anxiety from that, so plus 34 for that one. It's going to be a huge amount of less anxiety, so those were our dimensions we went with.
So you've created a pretty awesome ghost kitchen with drone delivery capabilities with kind of a potentially, everyone gets drone parts as a side.
That's right, because
Excellent.
we all know it's all about the tools over the people.
Exactly. Oh. Okay.
So the other thing you would consider with that, because one of the measures or one of the dimensions was reduce the waste of food, I think, and reduce people having to be around, is whether you also have to pay ahead, right? If you don't have the pay ahead, then you could actually have that reverse happen, where you're going to have a lot of waste because people are going to order, I changed my mind. I just want to see if the drone crashes, something like that. So you have to make sure that you understand, what's in place for your product already to know what value it could bring.
It's Drone Dash.
Drone Dash, oh boy. It's a thing. You'll start seeing the hashtags soon, I'm sure, knowing Chuck. Okay, anybody else have one they want to share from this side of the room?
I saw Dimitri raise his hand.
I think you're just picking on people that work at Insight because you know all their names.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
They've been really
Because you could pick Lisa, or you could pick Anna, or you could pick...
Thank you. So we also did the fast food restaurant. We also did order ahead. And our feature was simplifying the order ahead. We put it through the dimensions of making money, reducing cost, what was the other one? Saving time and simplifying the experience. We would use a mixture of KPIs in the restaurant, as well as obviously revenue and some NPS score to measure. And I mean, we have no data backing up our weights, so we came up with the arbitrary number of 20, and then we measured it against the arbitrary number we come up with for a read menu, and we decided it'd be more valuable to do the order ahead.
Very cool.
Okay.
Cool. Did anybody pick any of the third items up here on the menu, on the list? Or we stick with
Yeah, so Chuck was trying to throw in the negatives. That was, were they all negatives?
Just a bit, they all negative.
Yeah.
And they all legal regulatory stuff, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So do people really want to see the calorie count for menu items? Some do. Some don't, or some do, or they all do, but what's it going to do? It's going to prevent them from buying the Big Mac. Because they see that the Big Mac has 15 billion calories, and if you don't show them the 15 billion calories, they're like, oh, a Big Mac, I like it, right? So that could have a negative impact to the sales, or to the, the amount of stuff bought. I guess it wouldn't be Big Mac from that one,
whatever,
but yeah.
Anyone, so, out of curiosity, has anyone not ordered a menu item because I saw it was a high calorie item?
Me.
Okay. All right. I'm not the only one.
You are not the only one. Okay, awesome.
Cool.
Ready for the benefits?
Yeah.
You want to touch it? There
Okay.
you go.
So benefits of the value slide, and I work in in the diamond shaped building over there. That's why I put this. This is one good picture I could find. So benefits. We talked about prioritization. I think we just experienced this, right? So you have a bunch of features. You've got effort estimates. Like, which one should I pick? Like widget G sounds good because I want to have something I can deliver to customers faster. I have no idea what the other ones are. And limiting technical debt's always really good, but as a product owner, sometimes I don't necessarily. I'm not as enthused by that as much as other things. Let's say.
Technical
But now with the
debt is
value
important.
framework, I'm
Please.
like, wow, like that becomes very obvious, right? my decision for value becomes very obvious, very much what we want to do. So it makes that, again, it takes the emotion out of it, it makes it very plain and white. There is a little fuzziness on some of this stuff, there can be, but you can work it out as you go back and revise it. Measuring value is really great. Everyone's seen a velocity chart, and sometimes, and obviously this team had something bad happen, but that value burn up is really, really good. Like, I love talking about value burn up with a client, or hey, this is the value we've delivered to a client versus this is the number of magical sprint points that we've delivered over a period. Your customers don't care about velocity, they care about the value delivered. I hate hammering that home, but a lot of times leadership gets really hung up on the number of sprint points you delivered in a particular time. But this is a great chart, and I think one of the things you will see is that value will plateau over time, right? And value, then drives the decision. Right?
Yeah, so the thing with this value framework, should you build it, it's useful at three different stages, and the third stage is measuring, right? What you're seeing here is the kind of projected value, so you can track how you're delivering, and what Chuck's talking about is that plateau where your value is starting to level off. Well, that drives the question from product with the business, should we keep going? The stuff that we have left to build, it really doesn't do much, right? There's not a lot of high value here. Now they might say sure, or they may say, no, let's pivot. Let's pivot, let's start talking about some other things, let's change where the direction we're going. Let's be agile. So yeah, the charting for this, if you go ahead and you do your evaluation, can be really helpful for those types of conversations and really keep you focused on constantly delivering and maximizing your value. I had to throw that in there.
So wrapping up,
it's
kind of 4 key points you want to take away. Delivery metrics are great, and they're important. As an agilist, you want to have that kind of empiricism with your team so you know how you can optimize your team. But your customers don't care about it. Your customers care about the value of the things they get. So track that stuff, use that to improve the way you deliver value. But at the end of the day, you should be tracking value. And again, we want to make sure that we're aligning with what we deliver to what our customers' wants and needs are, and to what our organizational goals and strategies are. Different companies would value things very differently. The company that Wendy works for, my company, our clients, all have different value propositions. We all have different customers. We have different needs. We have different ways we interpret. The way Best Buy sells to customers is very different than Circuit City back in the day. We see what happened to Circuit City. But it can be very different. So I think you have to go in and really figure out how you're going to adapt, coming up with a consistent way. And value delivered can and should be tracked. So this should be something, it isn't just you kind of do this at the beginning and then kind of forget about it. You should be going back and following up to make sure that the value you thought you were going to deliver, you actually delivered. And that's really the most critical part of this as well.
Right, so 3 phases that you use a value framework for. You use it for prioritization to determine what you should build, right? Help determine what you should build. You should use it as that leading to see how we're going to be delivering our value and making those decisions as to when we may want to pivot. And then finally, this is the accountability section. Did we do what we said we were going to do? Did we increase our customer, by 10%? Did we deliver those cheeseburgers faster or more of them? And so once you've released your stuff, you want to be measuring based on the measurements you said, right? You actually did yourself a favor. You've identified all these things, which makes it easy for you to report out and say, hey, look what we did. We're delivering high value, and we're making a difference for the organization. We're moving the needle on different things.
And that's really it. Some good resources you can use. Melissa Perry's Escaping the Bill Track is my default to any answer if I want to learn more about product. She does amazing work in this book. She covers value frameworks, different ways of doing this. She has a podcast, I think it's Product Labs. Her podcast is really amazing. It's really good while you run long distances in the cold. And this business value game is something that I think Wendy found really inspiring.
Right, so when I first set off on this mission to have people talk about value instead of talking about velocity or whatever other things they wanted to talk about, or just prioritizing from their gut, I went out and did a search and found this business value game, and it uses 4 basic value measures. New users, upsell of users, retainment of users, and operational efficiency. I took that, I actually used it with some teams, and then I grew it. And so ultimately the framework, one of the frameworks that I've built had 9 dimensions and all the associated scales, because again, it's about covering the entire organization, covering the entire company in what they care about.
Yeah.
So.
I think knowing that these things will evolve and change over time as well.
Yeah,
and that they
iterative.
should grow, and you should experiment with them. And sometimes if you got to start with just a couple, when you're forming a team or a program, that's really good as well. So.
Yep, so, questions? Come on, we covered it all that well? Hold on, Joe is coming. Joe has reached you.
Okay, so, when you first start introducing this topic into your organizations or into your leadership teams, how is that generally perceived? And, are you working kind of from the ground up, kind of from all over? I mean, how are you starting to introduce these concepts?
Yeah, I would start small. I had the benefit of having a lot of people networked that trusted the things I was talking about. And so when I started introducing these things, and I was introducing it slowly, right? So I started out with just those 4, which is on the other page, just those 4, because I was trying to help a product person solve a problem. There was a product person who had 20 stakeholders and they couldn't get any agreement. So I said, hey, I have a thing for you to try. So we tried it and it worked really well because again, it generated all those conversations about value. From there, I'm like, hey, I think we might have a thing here. And I brought some people together and we built a thing. And then we piloted it across the organization. I pulled the people that had some interests and were having those challenges. Because again, this is trying to solve a problem. And it just went from there, right? The pilots helped us figure out, oh, that dimension doesn't work, or those scales are wrong, continuous improvement. And then we rolled it out beyond that. And it morphed and changed up until I left. It was constantly in a state of growth. But yeah, start small and start with an area that you think has an issue with prioritization, because it's really helpful there.
Yeah, I think having blunt conversation. My experience, Wendy and I worked together at the where she developed this, and I went into another consulting or client engagement where the client was very big on doing this giant feature that like 5 people were going to use, and we were going to spend 5 months or 10 sprints building this thing, and they were like dead set, and we're like, you're not listening to your product owner. Your product owner is saying this is a terrible idea. Your developers on your team think it's a terrible idea. Like, how do we help you convince the highest paid person that this is a bad idea? And so we started kind of drafting this idea out of the value framework and adapting it to their needs. And we finally got ahead of it enough to say that, hey, they realized we didn't get the value framework fully baked out and done for them. It's on our roadmap for hopefully next quarter. But we were able to force that conversation to get them to think about this is the value it's going to provide. And that moment where they start thinking about value delivered and they start thinking about what the customers want and the other things you could be doing that are better for them, that's kind of when the track. And so it's that weird thing of, they're just starting on their agile journey and they haven't really empowered their product owners. They're still very much siloed, very much, thou shalt, stuff getting thrown over a wall. That becomes a way to kind of empower the product owners by giving them a number they can go back with. At least start having those conversations. It takes a while to get to this stuff. I mean, it was a while at the previous client to get that thing built out and get everyone to agree on it. But just starting to have those conversations, to start thinking about the value delivered, can be really, really critical to getting it done. Anybody else over here?
Makes sense?
Nobody's here, Joe. I'm just trying to get you to start running over there.
Yeah, we want Joe to run. All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Here's our information. I will get a copy of the deck and the handout uploaded to my LinkedIn, linked on my LinkedIn profile. I'm not saying this to the LinkedIn whore, but I will, always free to connect. I'll post them on my Twitter account as well, and maybe the blog if I get to it. Connect with us. We've got lots of good information we share.
Please reach out, say hi.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming. It was really great seeing you all. It's a little nerve-wracking when you think about the first time being in public presenting to this many people, and over a screen it's very easy because it's just 14 to 27 inches of glass. But it was great seeing you all. Thank you for participating. Thank you for coming out, and have a good rest of your conference. I think for the plenary activity, the next activity.
Oh, the next activity is probably here, I think.